Hi folks, today's video, I really had to think about why I'm doing this video, for lack of a better way of putting it, because it concerns an aspect that's going to be made by Uranus in Gemini, transiting through Gemini, and Pluto transiting through Aquarius. But the aspect does not become exact till 2026. And whenever I am looking at aspects, so specifically Uranus when it enters Gemini, and I'm going to give you these dates, and Pluto when it is in Aquarius, between 2026 and 2028, Uranus will trine Pluto. Now, both Uranus and Pluto are very slow-moving planets. And the last time Uranus and Pluto were involved in an aspect together was a notorious square between 2012 and 2015. So I'm going to touch on that as well, because we can think about oh, this is one of those notorious moments where Abby wants to check something and just got inspired to do it in the moment, and we'll see if I can get clear on this or I can't. While my computer does this thing. Uranus, when it transits, Uranus-Pluto aspects are lengthy ones, because the planets are direct and retrograde and direct and retrograde, and they're slow moving and they dance together for a while. Uranus and Pluto squared each other between 2012 and 2015. At that time, Uranus was transiting through Aries and Pluto was in Capricorn. And as I've said to you with squares, the slower moving planet, in this case Uranus, would be checked by Pluto in Capricorn. And Uranus would need to do something in the Aries part of the chart to allow Pluto to continue to move forward and transform the Capricorn part of the chart. Now, 2012 to 15 were fascinating, dynamic years for a lot of people. And I am, in this case, not talking about Neptune and Pisces and the crisis in Pisces that started to make its presence felt in 2014-15 and in 16-17 reached a peak. In this case, I'm really encouraging you to think back to 2012 to 15. Wherever Uranus is transiting, he asks, actually it's not an ask, it comes through as an inner compulsion to be authentic in that part of the chart, to follow the path that is right for you. And whenever Uranus is going through a particular part of the chart, it can create quantum leaps of understanding, but it's a knowing, it's an intuitive knowing, it is an intuitive integrity in just about the cleanest, truest sense, where you're just like, where you just know what the next right thing is for you, or what the right thing is for you in the part of the chart that it is transiting. And very often under Uranus's influence, other people may perceive you as being rebellious, or other people may perceive you as being somehow stubborn or kind of zany or eccentric or unconventional, or, you know, all those words that we use with the sign of Aquarius. And somewhere between 2012 and 15, if Pluto wanted Uranus to allow you to tap into the truest, most authentic, singular part of yourself, where you had integrity with yourself, in the Aries part of the chart, so that Pluto could continue to transform the Capricorn part of the chart. This is the best I can do. I'm not seeing your chart. You know your birth chart. Hopefully you know which house is occupied by the sign of Aries and Capricorn. Uranus in Aries. How do we follow your own path? The beat of your own drum in the Aries part of the chart, and somehow doing that and committing to that and listening to that would allow Pluto in Capricorn to continue his transformation of the Capricorn part of the chart, the house occupied by Capricorn in your chart. By the time we get to the trine, because squares are followed by trines, I found what I was looking for. For many of us, the last time that Uranus and Pluto were conjunct, whenever we look at squares and trines, etc., it helps us to go back to when it is that these two planets met up. And there are a lot of people who like to think of Uranus and Pluto in collective terms. Uranus and Pluto met up for the last time in 1966. Thanks for your patience. Just bear with me. Just bear with me. Just bear with me. I really did not expect to be going down this rabbit hole. But, you know, as I said, you start talking and you think, let me just, if I'm going to do this, let's just get you the information that I think is fair for you to get. Uranus-Pluto conjuncted in 1966. The last set of squares we dealt with was 2012 to 15. I don't know that the conjunction in 1966 is going to mean a whole lot to any one of us from an individual chart perspective. I think from a collective perspective, people may go back to the late 60s and we may look at our understanding of how it means to operate in an authentic way, in a Uranian way, in a way that we're connected to. Some people may want to draw this happens to me when I read charts from a Western perspective, and this is one of the issues that I can sometimes have with certain Jyotish practitioners, not all, which is that the lens can become very traditional. So if a woman has a strong Mars, she's going to be a problematic wife, she's going to be a problematic daughter-in-law. But you and I hopefully both know that those are not the only two roles that a woman can play and should be measured on, and that if there are corrections needed, is that really the correction we all need to make? You know, that idea, or you know, a marriage has to be between a man and a woman. You know, those kinds of things are changing, and people are looking at things from a different lens. But astrology and astrological interpretation can also be dependent on, can really be dependent on the lens from which it is being looked at. From a collective perspective, people will often look at generations and mark generations as the Uranus in Libra generation, or the Uranus going through Scorpio generation, or the Uranus going through, and the same with Pluto going through Libra generation, Pluto going through Scorpio generation, Pluto going through Sag generation. And there are collective themes for certain astrologers that brings up from a social awareness and social transformation perspective. Fine. Some of those interpretations I find amusing sometimes. If you're going to look at Pluto going over the sign of Capricorn from 2008 to 2024, and Capricorn standing for conservative, traditional power dynamics and power structures, including from a governance perspective, you could talk to two different people with regard to what you think Pluto's transformation has been there and get very different responses. One might say that the transformation has fundamentally weakened the very foundations of certain types of conservative structures. Some people might say, given the rise of the far right in so many different contexts, that it has done the opposite. I think I feel like it's in the process of which the interpretations fall short. I think we can probably look back and say, oh, this is when Pluto came and kind of, did his kind of de-weeding process related to the sign it was transiting in. Let's just bring this back to our charts, right? Down to rabbit holes and the things that we as astrologers, or I as an astrologer, can get carried away on, as I was just saying. The Pluto-Uranus squares and trines would be related to, as all squares and trines to planets, in my opinion, and oppositions, would be related to the last time the planets conjuncted, which would be in 1966. That, what it means to each of us individually, I'm gonna, depending on when we were born, depending on whether it makes sense to even go back that far or not, or what that means with regard to where we are at generationally, I'll let you take a look at and think about. Both Uranus and Pluto are incredibly transformational planets. In Pluto's case, Pluto transforms, I find, for our highest benefit, and we only get into trouble if we don't get with the program and don't understand what the program is. And we hold on to certain things that Pluto is trying to remove from us, or other people are trying to hold on to us. You've heard me say this before, and don't want us to transform in that direction. With Uranus, as I've already said, what is that right path for you? You may be choosing to do something, and there may be a conventional path, and there would be your path. So the example I like to give, for example, is if someone is a painter, and one of the routes that they can go through is they can get an MFA, and then they could do this, and maybe they have to show something in this gallery or do it this way, and all of a sudden someone submits something because they really feel it's the right thing for them in a particular gallery that's a little bit off the beaten path, or shows in a particular venue, or let's say that you're a musician and you do your solo work, and there's a certain way in which you should get your demos made, and you should do this and do this, but you just feel like the right path for you might be to kind of produce your own records. You feel really inspired to do something, and you put it somewhere. Let's say you put it on Spotify or streams, and you get discovered out. What is your way? Or you're an actor. This is a very common LA thing, which is, there are people here who are following a very linear path. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to get this credit, I'm going to get this credit. And someone who's sitting in a market and may not even be a member of a union by virtue of the fact that they've been doing a certain kind of work, is kind of are marching to the beat of their own drum, somehow get discovered or land something that those people who are, what is your path through a particular process? What are the appointments that you are meant to keep? You could call it, with Uranus, a kind of a following your bliss, but it is not a following your bliss in a Neptunian way. It's not getting lost in it. It's not seeking a certain kind of escapist pleasure. It is very much around, what is the next right step for me? Who am I? What is my signature? What is my imprint? 2012, 2015. Following that signature, that imprint, that integrity, that truth to yourself, your path in the Aries part of the chart allowed Pluto. Pluto was dependent on Uranus because it was a square. It needed Uranus to encourage each of us to act with our own special integrity in the Aries part of the chart so that Pluto could successfully continue its transformation in the Capricorn part of the chart. When we get to the trines, specifically, between 2026 and 2028. There's an ease and a flow. It's not a question of dependence as much as it is a question of a channel that opens up, where our authenticity in the Gemini part of the chart, where Jupiter is right now, but by 2026 he's not going to be there, but our following our own path, seeking the right people for us in the Gemini part of the chart, somehow allows with greater ease. It's almost with greater ease. It's not a question of tension. It's not a question of I need this to happen and this to happen. As much as there's a certain flow, it enables Pluto to continue its transformation in the Aquarius part of the chart. It is a glorious transit. It is a lovely transit. I'm bringing it up now. This is one of those Mercury shadow period videos. I'm bringing this up now because Uranus currently in Taurus and Pluto currently retrograde in the first degree of Aquarius and moving back into Capricorn are in a 5-degree orb of this aspect. They move slowly. Uranus is going to go retrograde in Taurus, and Pluto is going to move into Capricorn retrograde. But at that point in time, they might start separating at some point, and then Pluto will go direct, and Uranus will still be retrograde. But while Uranus is then backed up and in Taurus, it's not going to be within a 5-degree orb, and then ultimately it'll be in that orb. Uranus and Pluto are going to start flirting with this trine mid-July, right around now. And from mid-July to the end of September, they're going to remain within this orb. I'm going to talk about this transit like as if it is kind of a distant drumbeat, that as we head into 2025, we'll get a little bit, it's going to, between now and 2026, it's just going to get stronger and stronger and stronger. Right now, Uranus is in the Taurus part of the chart, and Pluto is in the Aquarius part of the chart, getting ready to go to Capricorn part of the chart in September because it's retrograde, and finish up its transformation in the Capricorn part of the chart since 2008 by November of this year. So right now, we can think of Uranus asking us to act in our truest way in the Taurus, and one could argue also thinking about what that means in the Gemini part of the chart, and what flow that creates for Plutonian transformation right now in that first degree of Aquarius, last degree of Capricorn. And if that feels too complicated for you to think about, I'm trying to find a different way of saying it. First and foremost, it is not the most important aspect in the skies right now. As we head into August, the most important and frankly, the most annoying, Jupiter square Saturn is just going to be alive in August. And that is a pain in the butt. And I will talk about that as we head into August. So Uranus trining Pluto, there's a lovely energy at work. I would just say, for now, think more in terms of, and this may be something that is developing, think in terms of what you feel is right for you in the Taurus part of the chart, and how that might contribute to Pluto finishing up its transformation in the Capricorn part of the chart, just for now. And I know you might say, well, Pluto's not in Capricorn, but that's where Pluto's headed. And that's where the trine becomes closer. And the question of when it is coming closer and when it is separating, to some extent for the rest of this year, it's just going to become very confusing, and we can just think of it as that drumbeat. Next year, Uranus enters Gemini. Briefly, Uranus is going to go retrograde, it's going to go direct, and it's going to, there's going to be, so Uranus enters Gemini next year between July 7th and November 7th of 2025. Then from November 7th of 2025 to April 25th of 2026, it comes back to Taurus to finish things up. And then after April 26th, April 25th, 26, it is going to go through Gemini till August the 3rd, 2032. So briefly, next summer, between July 7th and November 7th, Uranus is going to be in Gemini. This is going to be one of those, I'm entering Gemini for the first few degrees, and shortly after I enter Gemini, very similar to what Pluto is doing in Aquarius this year, I come into the first degree, I flirt with the second degree, and then I go retrograde. And Uranus is going to do the same thing. It's going to come into Gemini, it's sort of a four-month period anyway. So let's just say for about a couple of months it's direct, then it's go retrograde, and it's going to come back into Taurus between November 7th of 2025 to April 25th of 26. And it's after April 25th of 26 when he comes into Gemini that we actually have, by that point in time, then Uranus is firmly in Gemini, Pluto is firmly in Aquarius, and the trines, let the trines begin. So these trines don't even become exact, as I said, till 26 to 28. But as we look at the new moons and the full moons, and we look at the aspects in the sky, I was going to start to bring up this trine. And I thought, let me just do a brief video and just address what is going on with it so that you're aware of something developing here. And if you were to say, okay, Abhi, what does this mean to be right now? I think Pluto has been such a fascinating planet this year. Pluto in Aquarius has made its presence felt and kind of started the transformation process over the next 18, 19 years in Aquarius between January 20th and February 20th of this year. We've had planets and they entered the sign of Taurus square Pluto. We had the planets entering Gemini trine Pluto. Mars is going to get ready to trine Pluto on Sunday. This Sunday, on the 21st, the day of the Capricorn full moon. That's going to be conjunct Pluto. As the planets move from Cancer to Leo, and we've just recently seen this happen with Mercury and with Venus, they oppose Pluto. The full moon on the 21st, because it's conjunct Pluto, the sun is going to be opposite Pluto. And I think on Monday of next, on the 23rd, which falls next week, the sun will actually be opposite Pluto. And then as the planets start to move between that Virgo Libra cusp later this year, they'll trine Pluto again. And, as they move further along, they'll get ready to square Pluto again, and they'll conjunct Pluto again in the beginning of next year. And this cycle will continue. And when I say planets, really, I'm talking about the sun and Mercury and Venus and Mars. So Pluto remains an active presence, makes his presence felt. For me, 2024 is notable for how Pluto announces and kind of throws down the gauntlet for some of the changes he's got planned for the Aquarius part of the chart. But very importantly, and I've been saying this for the past couple of years, it is almost more important, even though Pluto spends much less time in Capricorn this year than last year, by November, to think about what transformations Pluto has been making in the Capricorn part of our chart and to help Pluto finish that for our benefit. What changes has Pluto been making in the Capricorn part of our chart since 2008 for our benefit? And it is a transformation. And for now, if you want to think a little bit in terms of how does following your own path in the Taurus part of your chart, where Uranus is right now, how could it contribute to and help, not in an urgent, dependent, edgy way, like it did between 2012 to 15, how could it open up a kind of a, it's a little bit like if there's a bend in a hose, you get it to be in a certain place and the water just flows, easily. A trine feels to me like that. A square has that kind of feeling, but with a trine, There's just this flow. So what is it that you could do that involves you committing to the path that feels right to you in the Taurus part of the chart that could help Pluto, both with the transformation in the Aquarius part of the chart, but especially with the transformation in the Capricorn part of the chart by November? The aspect is only flirting with the 5-degree orb right now. That's why I am mentioning it and giving a heads up. It's lovely that we have this to look forward to in between 2026 and 2028. Lovely to have a trine between Uranus and Pluto. But it's something that's just building. And I just wanted to have this context because when I do the full moon video in Capricorn next and we talk about the aspects that are around this full moon, this is one I am going to bring up. But it's important because the full moon conjuncts Pluto. And I was going to talk about Mars trining Pluto, more exactly, and Uranus trining Pluto. But I had to admit that the Uranus-Pluto trine is not, it's more that the full moon in Capricorn is trining Uranus on its way to becoming full. But we're starting to flirt with that territory. We're starting to flirt with this question of what is the right path in the Taurus part of the chart. By following that right path, is there any dependency with what the right path might be in the Gemini part of the chart, where Uranus will be for 4 months in 2025 and for good after April of 2026. Sometimes depending on where which houses are occupied by successive signs and what the relationship between them are, a transit through sign A can set things up for the next transit in sign B. If you've got Taurus and Gemini in your first and second houses, in your 9th and 10th houses, in your 7th and 8th houses, this is very, very obvious. Sometimes even something like the 10th and 11th houses, you can start to make that connection. 3rd and 4th houses, you can start to make that connection. 5th and 6th houses, you can start to make that connection. How I become more individual following my creativity and what the result of that might be in my job. 5th and 6th houses, for example. For the purpose of this week, and I think for the purpose of the rest of this year, at least till November, the question is primarily how following the right path for you in the Taurus part of the chart, Uranus's transit, can create a flow for Pluto to finish up his transformation in the Capricorn part of the chart. To a slightly lesser extent, how following that path could impact Pluto's transformation in the Aquarius part of the chart, which really made its presence felt this year. And finally, I would also think about following the right Uranian path in the Taurus part of the chart. How does that set things up for when Uranus enters Gemini? And what could the correlation between the two be? These are questions for you to examine because you would know your chart. Okay? Out of all the videos that I'm doing, this in some ways is the least urgent. If you really want to get a sense, I am going to do the full moon in Capricorn video next. It is for me on Saturday night, early Sunday morning, on the 21st. For some other people, it might be later on Sunday. If you are impatient and want to get a sense of what that full moon is going to be about, take a look at my weekly overview this week. I've also done a video on Mercury's shadow period, which is where we're at right now, so that might be interesting and useful. But if you want to get an energy of this time, and particularly the full moon in Capricorn, and you don't want to wait for my full moon in Capricorn video, take a look at the weekly overview. A lot of what is mentioned there is relevant to the full moon in Capricorn video. I've pretty much all but done that full moon in Capricorn. I just want to Capricorn video and the weekly overview. I just want to draw everything together as we head towards the weekend. Okay, if you found this video intriguing, useful, you want me to take a look at your birth chart, you can, or you want me to make an easy to read version of your chart, you can use the email address in the description box below and I can give you information about rates. Feel free to tell anyone who you might think finds this video useful, share it with them. Subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already, especially if you're watching this on social media. I will stop posting videos to Facebook and Twitter by the end of this month. Next to the subscribe button is a bell icon. Hover over it. There's a wiggly bell on top. Click on it and you'll be notified when I do new videos. You can use the thanks button underneath this video to contribute to the channel. Comment and like if you feel so inclined. It will increase circulation on YouTube. Thank you for your patience with this video. It's shorter than my other ones. As I said, not every video has the same kind of urgency. But I do want us to I thought it was kind of intriguing to think about the square in 2012 to 15 and think about this upcoming trine between 26 to 28. And with squares and trines, think about how that square may have set up a harvest time between 26 to 28 with this Uranus-Pluto energy. And think about how in the middle of everything that's going on, you can feel that channel open up. You can start to feel that flow of energy, even though it's just starting up at present. Okay? I will leave it at that. More to follow soon. Take care.